And this week, I'm joined by Washington Examiner senior writer David Harsanyi. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me.
So, David, you've written in the magazine issue this week about the Middle East peace process, and we always talk about how remote peace in the Middle East is. It often seems to be, but it's not totally unrealistic to think that something at least better than what we've seen in recent years is possible. Is that correct?
I mean, I think so. I think there's this myth, or people believe this myth, that there's a war between the Arabs and the Israelis. I mean, that war is long over. Israel is at peace with most Sunni nations, if not, explicitly with a peace agreement. There's clearly no war going on between, let's say, Saudi Arabia and Israel and so forth.
Right.
It's between the Palestinians, mostly in Gaza and Israel. I think now that there's going to be a buffer zone around Gaza, now that many nations have signed on to Trump's agreement, which is 20 points long, and the first point is that Hamas must de-radicalize.
Sure.
There's a chance that that can happen. It's not going to be easy. I don't think Hamas is going to voluntarily give up its weapons as easily as we think. But if you have them in this sort of hermetically sealed bubble there, you could stop them from getting Iranian arms. You could stop them from launching, hundreds of missiles at civilian, towns and so on. I think there's a chance in the long run that you're going to have some peace. I mean, it's definitely not a sure thing, but I think that now there's a chance. Yeah.
So one of the interesting things is that the way in which President Trump arrived at this ceasefire is pretty much the opposite of what everybody in the ceasefire now crowd and a lot of our allies recommended that he do.
Yeah. I mean, I think going back to his first term, when he struck the Abraham Accords, I think for the first time in decades, there was an American president who circumvented the Palestinian problem. That's not to say that he didn't invite them into the mix, that he doesn't want to fix that problem. But for many decades, every agreement or many agreements were undermined by trying to fix this problem that is clearly very difficult for numerous reasons to fix. And the Palestinians from my perspective, have simply been unable to agree to a deal. When Yasser Arafat was presented with his own state, I think he had to say no, because the radical elements within Palestinian society don't want it. I don't know if that's still the case, but Donald Trump circumvented that problem to make other deals. And I think he did the same thing here in a way. Hamas is not, they're at the negotiating table. Israel wanted back their hostages, but they're not in charge of their future. I mean, to some extent they are, because they have an army, but
Right.
in other ways, the plan for Gaza is not really in their hands, and it shouldn't be. One of the points in Trump's peace proposal is that they not just de-arm, but get out of politics as a group, Hamas. So we'll see. But I think that's what's that's what's different here.
There's also an element of this where peace was made possible by Israeli victories. Know that this was allowed to sort of unfold in a way that Israel scored some major wins on the battlefield.
For sure. A lot of Israel has lost on the PR front here in the United States and elsewhere. There's no doubt about that. But when you talk about this war, it wasn't really a war against Hamas as much as it was a war against Iran and its proxies, which surrounded Israel. So when you think about it in that way, you think about what happened to Hezbollah, which was soundly, defeated, weakened, which led to the Assad regime falling. And we'll see how that turns out again. There are a million ethnicities and clans and tribal tensions in the area, so you don't know how that's going to work out. They embarrassed Iran militarily, and with our help, they set back their nuclear program. They hurt the Houthis, and they decimated Hamas in a pretty significant way as well. So that, by any standard, I think is an impressive military victory. Israel is now the superior military force in that region, and I think that means something to them, despite PR losses. I think, in fact, it's much more important to them. They are much safer now than before. And I think because they are safer, there's a better chance for peace as well. Depends what Iran wants to do. They want to rearm. they want to go back to the same situation, Israel will have to act again. But there's a chance, they have a chance not to do that.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for having me.
If you're watching us on YouTube, you can click here to read David's full story in our digital magazine.